Most men believe the solution to a fading connection is more communication, more messages, more check-ins, more presence, more demonstrations of interest, availability, investment. The logic seems sound. If the problem is that she is pulling away, the answer must be to close the distance, to fill the gap before it becomes permanent. And so they do. They reach out more frequently. They respond faster. They make themselves more available. They work harder to keep the conversation alive. And they watch, with genuine confusion, as the very effort they are investing accelerates the outcome they are trying to prevent. Here is the psychological reality that most men never receive clearly. Attraction is not maintained through constant presence. It is maintained, and in many cases, deepened through its opposite, through the specific, intentional, purposeful use of space, through the kind of silence that does not signal indifference but communicates something far more compelling, that you are a man who is complete without the constant reassurance of her attention. In this video, I am going to break down 7 specific psychological mechanisms through which silence, real, intentional, grounded silence, deepens what a woman feels for a man. Not by manipulating her, not by playing games, but by creating the precise psychological conditions in which genuine attraction, genuine longing, and genuine emotional depth can actually grow. The 7th mechanism is the one that most men never connect to the outcome it produces, and once you understand it, the way you relate to silence in your own connections will change permanently. Stay with me through all 7. I'm Liza. This is Secrets Inside the Mind. If you're new here, subscribe to Secrets Inside the Mind right now. Every week I break down the real psychology of attraction, female behavior, and what actually moves women at the level beneath words. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and let's get into it. Before the 7 mechanisms, I need to define what I mean by silence precisely, because the word is frequently misunderstood, and the misunderstanding produces either the wrong behavior or an accurate behavior applied with the wrong intention. Purposeful silence is not the absence of care. It is not withdrawal as punishment. It is not a tactic deployed to make her anxious so she will chase you. It is not the passive-aggressive retreat of a man who is hurt and wants her to notice. All of those things look like silence from the outside. None of them are what I am describing, and all of them produce outcomes that are the opposite of what this video is about. What I mean by purposeful silence is this: the natural, authentic, grounded quality of a man who has a full life that does not require constant external validation to feel meaningful. A man who does not flood the interaction with his presence because he is not afraid of what the space might mean. A man whose composure in the quiet communicates, more loudly than any message could, that he is settled in himself, in his direction, in his sense of his own worth. That quality, that specific, inhabited, unperformed settledness, is what this video is about. And the reason it works is not strategic, it is psychological. It activates 7 specific mechanisms in female attraction psychology that constant communication actively suppresses. Let me walk you through all 7. Mechanism number 1. Purposeful silence creates the space in which a woman's genuine feelings about you can actually develop. This is the mechanism that most men never even consider, because they are operating on the assumption that feelings grow through contact, through interaction, through the accumulation of shared time and shared words. And while that is partially true, it is not the complete picture. Because feelings do not only develop during interaction, they develop in the space after interaction, in the quiet, where the mind processes what it experienced and begins to assign meaning to it. Here is the precise psychological dynamic. When a man is constantly communicating, when there is an unbroken stream of messages, check-ins, responses, and presence, He is filling every moment of her cognitive space with input. She is constantly processing what he is saying, deciding how to respond, managing the interaction in real time. There is no gap, no quiet, no space in which her subconscious can take the raw material of what she has experienced with him and begin to build something from it. Silence creates that space. When communication pauses, when she is not receiving new input, her mind does not go quiet. It goes to work. It processes what was there. It replays moments. It notices things it did not have the bandwidth to notice while the interaction was ongoing. Your humor in that specific moment, the particular quality of your attention when she said something real, the way you handled something that most men would have handled differently. These details were present in the interaction, but they only become emotionally weighted in the reflection. This is why absence can make the heart grow fonder, not as a cliché, but as a precise psychological description. The attachment deepens not during the conversation, but in the quiet after it, when the brain is doing the work of building meaning from what occurred. Constant communication interrupts that work. Purposeful silence allows it to complete. What you will see when this mechanism is operating, she begins to reference things you said in earlier conversations. She brings up specific moments that she clearly replayed. Her level of emotional engagement when you do communicate is noticeably deeper than the surface level of the interaction would explain. These are the behavioral signatures of a woman whose subconscious has been doing exactly this work in your absence. Mechanism number 2, purposeful silence activates and amplifies a woman's natural curiosity. And curiosity is one of the most powerful drivers of sustained attraction available. Here is the psychological principle at work. The human mind is a pattern recognition and gap completion engine. When information is complete, when every question has an answer, when every silence has been filled, when a person is entirely legible, the mind's engagement with them reaches a natural ceiling. There is nothing left to discover, nothing left to pursue. The story, as far as the mind is concerned, is finished. When information is incomplete, when there are genuine, interesting gaps, the mind does not disengage. It leans in. It generates questions. It becomes invested in the process of finding answers. And in the specific context of attraction, this investment is felt as interest, as pull, as the specific quality of not being able to stop thinking about someone. A man who communicates constantly removes the gaps. He answers every possible question before it is fully formed. He explains himself completely, makes himself entirely available, eliminates every trace of uncertainty. He believes this is openness and honesty. What it actually does, at the psychological level, is complete the story too soon. And a completed story is not one the mind continues to engage with. Silence, by contrast, preserves the gaps. It creates the specific psychological condition in which her mind generates questions about you. Not anxious, destabilizing questions, but the curious, interested, engaged questions of someone who finds another person genuinely compelling. What is he doing right now? What is he thinking about? What is he building? She does not have answers, and the absence of answers keeps her mind actively oriented toward you in a way that constant communication can never produce. The practical signal of this mechanism: she begins to initiate contact after periods of silence. She asks questions that go beyond the surface. She brings up things she has clearly been thinking about since you last spoke. These are the behavioral expressions of genuine curiosity that has been building in your absence. Mechanism number 3, purposeful silence creates the specific conditions under which a woman's emotional investment in you grows, because the mind assigns greater value to what requires effort, patience, and genuine engagement to access. Psychologists refer to this as the effort heuristic. We instinctively attribute more value to things that cost something to obtain, not because effort is always a reliable signal of quality, but because over millions of years the correlation was strong enough that the heuristic became deeply encoded. What is freely available requires no assessment. What costs something is worth evaluating. In the context of attraction, your attention and presence are the resource. When that resource is freely, constantly, unconditionally available, when you respond to every message immediately, when you initiate every day, when your presence is essentially ambient, it costs her nothing to have it, and what costs nothing tends to be valued accordingly. When that resource is selective, when your presence, while warm and genuine when present, is not a constant stream, the calculus changes. She begins to think about you between interactions. She replays what happened. She anticipates what comes next. That thinking, that replaying, that anticipating, this is emotional investment. And it is investment she is making voluntarily, in the space your silence created, without any prompting from you. Here is the critical distinction. This is not about withholding warmth or creating artificial scarcity. It is about being genuinely, fully yourself. A man whose life is interesting and full enough that his attention is a real thing to be earned, not a background signal to be taken for granted. That genuineness is what makes the investment real rather than manipulative. She is not investing in a performance. She is investing in something she correctly recognizes as valuable. Mechanism number 4. The quality of a man's silence, his comfort with it, his lack of urgency to fill it, is one of the most accurate signals of genuine self-confidence available. And genuine self-confidence is one of the most reliably attractive qualities in male behavior. Here is what most men misunderstand. Confidence is not primarily communicated through what you say. It is communicated through what you do not say, through the specific quality of your comfort in the space between words. A man who can let a pause breathe, who can allow a moment of quiet without rushing to fill it, without the anxious monitoring of how she is receiving the silence, without the impulsive reach for his phone to send something that reestablishes contact, that man is demonstrating in the most credible possible way that he does not require her constant attention to feel okay about himself. That demonstration is felt immediately. She does not consciously evaluate it and conclude, he is confident. She simply feels, in the presence of his silence, a specific quality of ease and solidity that is the direct experiential signature of someone who is genuinely settled in themselves. Contrast this with the man who fills every space with communication, who responds within minutes always, who initiates again if she does not reply quickly enough, who interprets her silence as withdrawal and his own silence as risk. That pattern, however warmly motivated, communicates the precise opposite of what he intends. It communicates that her attention is required for his emotional stability. And emotional dependency, however kind its origin, does not produce attraction. It produces a sense of weight, of management, of a relationship that costs more than it provides. The man whose silence is comfortable, whose quiet is settled rather than anxious, creates a completely different experience. She feels in his presence and in his absence that this is someone who is already complete, that her attention is something he enjoys but does not require, and that specific quality, rarer than most men realize, is one of the most compelling things available. 4 mechanisms down, 3 to go. The final 3 build on each other in a specific way, and the 7th is the mechanism that, once you understand it, explains why all 6 of the previous ones work. Subscribe if you haven't. Drop a comment telling me which of the first 4 you recognize most clearly, and let's finish. Mechanism number 5. Purposeful silence creates anticipation. And anticipation is, at the neurological level, one of the most powerful amplifiers of desire available. The dopamine system, the brain's primary motivation and reward circuit, is not most strongly activated by receiving a reward. It is most strongly activated by anticipating one, by the specific psychological state of wanting something that has not yet arrived, by the tension between desire and its resolution. This is why the buildup in a story is often more compelling than its conclusion, why the almost moment can feel more intense than the moment itself, why absence in the right conditions can feel more present than presence. When a man communicates constantly, he provides constant resolution. Every moment of potential longing is immediately answered. There is no space in which desire can build because every space is filled before the building can begin. The dopamine cycle, which requires the interval between wanting and receiving, cannot engage. Silence creates that interval. When she knows that your communication is not a constant, ambient stream, that when you do reach out, it is because you chose to, not because you are simply always available. Your contact becomes an event rather than background noise. She begins to anticipate it, and in that anticipation, her emotional engagement with you deepens in ways that no amount of constant communication can produce. This is not manufactured. It is not a game. It is the natural consequence of being a man who is genuinely selective with his attention, whose presence, when it arrives, carries the weight of something that was chosen rather than simply happening. That weight is felt, and the feeling of it is what she will describe, if she could name it, as the specific pull she cannot entirely explain. Mechanism number 6. Purposeful silence creates the specific psychological conditions in which a woman can recognize and appreciate what is genuinely there between you, in what you have built, in who you are to each other. This mechanism is easy to overlook because it sounds simple, but it is the one that most directly affects the quality, not just the intensity, of what she feels. Here's the dynamic. When interaction is constant and predictable, it becomes the baseline. The baseline is not evaluated. It is simply the ambient condition of the relationship. The humor, the specific quality of attention, the particular way you make her feel when something real is happening between you. These things are present, but they are not seen. They are simply part of the ongoing stream that requires no specific recognition. Silence interrupts the stream, and in the interruption, the baseline becomes visible because it is no longer the ambient condition. It is something she is now noticing in its absence. The specific quality of your humor, which she was surrounded by and therefore barely conscious of, now registers as something specific and valued. The particular ease she feels in your presence, which she was inside and therefore unable to fully perceive, now surfaces as something she is actively missing. This is the paradox that most men never grasp. The qualities that make you valuable to her are often most clearly visible in your absence, not because she only appreciates what she does not have, but because the quiet gives her the perspective that constant presence prevents. Appreciation requires distance, not permanent distance, not cold distance, but the specific, purposeful pause that allows her to see clearly what was there. The behavioral signature of this mechanism. When you reconnect after a period of purposeful silence, the quality of her engagement is noticeably different, warmer, more specific. She references particular things about your previous interactions that she is clearly reassessing with new recognition. She is more present, more genuinely interested. The appreciation that the silence cultivated is now visible in how she shows up. Mechanism number 7, the final one, and the one that explains, at the deepest level, why all 6 of the previous mechanisms work. Silence creates emotional tension, and emotional tension, the specific, unresolved, not yet completed quality of something still in process, is the psychological state in which the deepest human connections are formed and felt. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Research consistently demonstrates that the human mind holds unfinished experiences more actively and more persistently than completed ones. Incomplete things occupy cognitive and emotional space in a way that resolved things do not. The story that ended cleanly releases its hold on the mind. The story that is still unfolding continues to live there, returning, resurfacing, demanding engagement. In the context of attraction, your silence creates an open loop, something that has not yet resolved, something her mind cannot file away and move on from because it is not finished. This is not anxiety. That is what I want to distinguish clearly. The Zeigarnik effect in attraction produces engagement, not distress. It produces the specific feeling of someone who is present in your thoughts, not because something is wrong, but because something is genuinely unfinished in the best possible sense, still developing, still becoming, still worth attending to. The push and pull dynamic that silence creates, the movement between connection and space, between warmth and composure, between presence and purposeful absence, is the precise rhythm of all the most enduring and genuinely felt human connections. Not the flat line of constant availability, not the absence of cold withdrawal, the specific, living oscillation of something that breathes. Women feel this rhythm before they can name it. They experience it as the specific quality of a connection that does not feel completed, that still has somewhere to go, and that feeling, more than any specific quality or behavior, is what keeps her emotionally invested, emotionally engaged, and genuinely unable to stop thinking about you. This is the mechanism beneath all the others. The reflection happens because the loop is open. The curiosity activates because the story is unfinished. The investment grows because the resolution has not arrived. The confidence registers because the composure in the unresolved moment is the most convincing signal available. The anticipation builds because the interval is real. The appreciation emerges because the space allows perspective, and the tension holds because the connection is genuinely, meaningfully still in process. That is what purposeful silence is, not a tactic, the natural rhythm of a man who is genuinely alive to his own existence, whose presence, when it arrives, carries weight because it was chosen rather than ambient, and whose silence, when it comes, speaks louder than most men's words. Let me bring this to something concrete, because understanding the 7 mechanisms only matters if it changes how you actually behave. Purposeful silence in practice does not look like ignoring her. It does not look like strategic disappearance, counted hours before responding, or the manufactured withholding of warmth you actually feel. All of those are performance, and performance, as always, is detectable, and detected performance produces the opposite of what this video is about. What it actually looks like is this: you have a life, a genuine, full, interesting life, work you care about, goals you are building toward, relationships that matter, things you are learning and creating and becoming. When you are in those things, you are actually in them. Your attention is actually there, not monitoring your phone, not managing her perception, not performing busyness to create an effect. When you reach out because you want to, from a genuine place, at a genuine moment, with genuine warmth, not on a calculated schedule, not to prevent her from forgetting about you, because you actually want to connect. The result of that combination, a full, genuine, directed life plus authentic, warm contact when it occurs, is exactly what produces all 7 of the mechanisms I described. The reflection happens naturally because you are not constantly there. The curiosity builds naturally because you are genuinely interesting and not entirely legible. The investment grows naturally because your attention is genuinely selective. The confidence registers naturally because you are not performing it. The anticipation develops naturally because your contact is meaningful rather than ambient. The appreciation emerges naturally because the space is real, and the tension is genuine because the connection is still genuinely unfolding. You cannot manufacture any of this, but you can build the conditions that produce it by investing genuinely and consistently in becoming the fullest, most grounded, most directional version of yourself available. That is the work, and everything else follows from it. 7 mechanisms. Silence creates space for emotional reflection because feelings develop in the quiet after interaction, not only during it. Silence amplifies curiosity because the unfinished, not entirely legible person is the one the mind keeps returning to. Silence encourages emotional investment because the mind assigns greater value to what requires genuine engagement to access. Silence demonstrates value and confidence because comfort in the quiet is the most honest signal available of a man who does not need external validation to feel complete. Silence builds anticipation and deepens desire because the dopamine system is an anticipation engine that cannot run on constant resolution. Silence creates the conditions for genuine appreciation because perspective requires distance, and distance allows her to see clearly what is actually there. And silence creates the emotional tension that deepens connection because the open loop, the unfinished story, the still developing thing is the one the mind and heart cannot release. None of these are tactics. They are the natural consequences of a single underlying quality. A man who is genuinely, fully, presently alive to his own existence, who does not require her constant attention to feel okay, who does not fill every space out of anxiety, who allows the quiet to do what the quiet does when it is inhabited by someone who has genuinely built something worth the silence. That man does not need to learn how to use silence. He simply lives, and the silence speaks for itself. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 mechanisms are you recognizing in your own life right now? Which one explains something you had experienced but never had the language to describe? And which one represents the clearest shift you can make in how you are showing up? Drop it honestly in the comments. I read every one. If this gave you something today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't. New content every week. I'll see you in the next one. I'm Liza. This is Secrets Inside the Mind. Take care of yourselves.